Hey, aloha everybody, aloha mai kako. Um, my name is Paulo Filafine Jr. I'm, as Natalie introduced, founder with Namekia and Aloha Legacy. Also with me, I have Wilma Kamanu Kaheali'i, who has come on board to do our musical performance, and he's really been my culture advisor since starting this over 11-year journey now into understanding what Hawaii, what Aloha is, and I'm so honored to be able to share it with you. Um, this image behind me, this is where it all began. Um, that's the royal tomb for the most sacred wife of Kamehameha the First, the king who unified the islands. And she, in her own right, was a deity, a walking goddess herself, but she gave it all up because of the promise of a greater God that was coming to Hawaii. And she was instrumental in turning over a religious codified way of life known as the Aikapu and freed the people from that oppression because it was told to her that it was based on falsehoods. It was based on lies. And that was told to her by the high priest of the time, Heva Heva. And so she gave all that up to follow the belief that a greater God was to come. And 4 months later, that greater God did come from America on a ship called the Thaddeus with the missionaries and a Hawaiian prince from Kauai. And there was a prophecy in Hawaii saying that this God will come in in this black vessel and it'll speak a language that you won't understand. And what occurred was when the missionaries did arrive 4 months after the Hawaiians decided to let go of this old codified way of life, the missionaries arrived at a place that the high priest said that they'll arrive to. And with them came this black box, and in it was the Holy Bible, speaking a language the Hawaiians didn't understand. And this queen made it such an important part of her process to move forward that she said, I want education for my people. I'm going to follow this way. And she listened to the missionaries. And before she became ill, she said, I want to be baptized as a Christian. And she became the first monarch to be baptized as a Christian. And that set Hawaii on a path to education, to restoring aloha in Hawaii, because prior to that, it had been oppressed for about 300 plus years by a high priest from the South Seas of Polynesia who said, Hawaii had too much aloha. We're going to bring a different way of life here. And that started the whole ali'i and chief system. And, and it painted it was a very terrible time in Hawaii in those respects. And but anyhow, the legacy that Queen Keopuolani had started with the pursuit of education for her people, with becoming Christian and being baptized as such. When the missionaries arrived in 1820, Hawaii had no written formal language. By 1834, when the printing presses had arrived and education was taking hold in the islands, Hawaii was at about a 95% literacy rate. And that spiritual void that needed to be filled was then filled with Christianity. The monarchy followed that direction. And so why do I bring this up? Is because to understand aloha, we need to understand that time frame in history for Hawaii, because that was a pivotal moment where aloha was restored. And so that's really our mission of what we're trying to do, is connect people to that, to aloha, to restore that sense of identity and purpose in here with our folks, because that fast forward to today and the climate that we see today in Hawaii, Hawaiians make up 20% of our population, yet 50% of the incarcerated inmates, ranked just about last in every social, economic, and health category that we can see. They're beholden to a promise of being on Hawaiian lands, but are put on a list and can never get there because the program's underfunded, so Hawaiians have no place to go. They end up living on the beach, being homeless. And so a lot of Hawaiians, the worst part of it is the whole concept where we talked about them outlawing the language in a sense at the schools. Now we're in a place where only 3% of the entire population in Hawaii speak the native Hawaiian language. And so that connection to aloha and understanding what was, and keeping that spirit here alive is now on the fringes. It's on the verge of extinction. So we're working our way through it to understand what was its history, what's its place, that it started with this sense of creation. It got suppressed with human sacrifice and wars. It thrived when the Bible came and this reconnection to God happened. Then it got suppressed again with colonization. And now Hawaiians are holding on. And a lot of them, unfortunately, we do work with young people. A lot of the young people, unfortunately, have lost that connection. Even though we work with these young folk, they said, oh, I don't really want to learn the language. I don't really want to learn these things. I just want to do these kind of cool activities that you guys do when you go out and represent Hawaii. I'd like to throw a rifle around and represent this historic period. But other than that, what's the purpose? And that's been pretty much the mission, is to make that relevant in young people's lives today. Connect them back to that being love, being God, connect them back to that being the spirit of this place. And so we're getting there, one little step at a time, to restoring that identity, that sense of place, and restoring aloha. And hopefully it can end up becoming a source of inspiration for the rest of the world to see, once again, Hawaiians thriving with that culture and sharing an example that we can all get together, we can all be as one, and it's an okay thing. And I think I'm going over time, so yeah.
Thank you very